What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. We are literally going to be jumping right into this. No explanations, no intros. So if you haven't gone and watched the other, I think there are 2 or 3 videos prior to this one on this same project, go back and watch those videos, because if you don't, you're just going to be really confused from here on out. So watch those before you go and watch this one, and then come back and watch this one. So I've got this last piece of gold mask that I had that was big enough to cover this entire semi. And I'll show you guys this because you can just see how transparent and awesome this gold mask is. If you have not used it, I highly recommend using it as a mask. It beats any other vinyl out there. It's super easy to cut. It's really nice as far as it doesn't leave any sticky residue behind. It doesn't lift your paint up. It's not really harsh on any of your surfaces that you lay it on. It's just overall an awesome product. So go and get some and check it out. I do have another roll on the way. It's just been the holiday season, so I have not got it yet. I should get it either tomorrow or the day after that. But I want to show you guys just how awesome this stuff is. So I've already went and laid fine line down to back mask this semi. And as you can see, I could have just laid this gold mask right on top of this and cut the edges out just fine, because you can see right through it with no issues at all. It's really transparent. It's really awesome for doing stuff like this. But since this semi is nothing but a little bit of curves, but mostly straight lines and a little bit of circles here and there, I just went ahead and I fine lined it as much as I could. And then I've already got it cut. I just took a razor blade to it not too long ago, and I literally just cut against my fine line. If you're not really comfortable cutting directly on the surface of what you're painting, I highly recommend just getting some fine line, tracing out your image, and then laying your mask on top of it, and then cutting right on that fine line. Just take your time, the trick to doing this, even if you're cutting on brand new, fresh painted surfaces, the trick to doing it without cutting through your paint is a fresh razor blade. And I know a lot of you guys will probably be like, well, that's kind of doesn't seem accurate, right? Because it's fresh, it's gonna be really sharp, it's gonna cut through things really easy. And that's exactly what you want when you're cutting against tape or cutting against anything that's been freshly painted or just painted in general. You want a fresh blade, and that reason why is because when you're actually cutting, you do not have to apply any pressure whatsoever, and that's how it should be. You should get a fresh blade that's really sharp. That way you do not apply pressure, because what happens when you apply pressure is you're going to be cutting through more than what you need to. So that is the trick. If you didn't already know that, is always have a fresh blade when cutting on tape or any type of surface on top of it. So the only 2 things that I did not get to really finish out are these stacks, which is no big deal. It's not really an issue. Actually, I need to finish this one right here before I go any further. But just show you how easy this stuff cuts. It's super simple. Don't overcomplicate it at all. So I've literally already cut out everything. The only thing I wasn't really happy with is the bottom part of this mirror right here, the circled part. So depending on how it looks when I get it cut out, I might just redo it, or I just might redo the actual paint itself, and I'll do that very last, because I still need to do the connecting rods for the mirror, and I'll do that at the very end as well, because they're so thin you really can't tape against it. So you're gonna have to do it at the very end and make sure it lays on flat on top of everything else. So that's getting another subject. I'm rambling here. So why do we do this? Why do we backmask the image that we've already done? Now, the semi image is not fully 100% completed because I need to go ahead and start working on the background. The background's gonna tie everything together. It's not gonna fully cover the entire tailgate either. We're gonna kind of make a little bit of a halo, and it's just gonna fade away towards the edges. So the reason why we're backmasking this again is because we need to do the background. This is a really easy and simple way to mask something to protect it if you need to do something in the background, or you need to just cover it and add layers on top of it. It's a really simple method. If you do something obviously if you do something really crazy, it's gonna take more time to cut it out. But that is the reason why we needed to backmask this semi, is because we are ready for the background portion of this project. So I'm going to continue to peel away this tape, and I will kind of warn you, if you are somewhere it gets hot and cold like I do a lot, like every day it's either hot or cold, that's just Indiana for you. It's just how it is. I tend to find out that this gold mask tends to rip really easily. See, look at that. It just peels right away, like there's no issues whatsoever, just peels it right up. And I've already see an area I forgot to fine line right there, that little sharp edge, so I need to fix that when I get this off. But it just, this stuff cuts so nice. You don't have to put any pressure on anything when you do it. You don't really have to do too much to get it to actually stick the way you need it, which makes it super nice to work with. Sometimes you're going to have to go back because it is so thin, it does rip pretty easy against different contours. It's just like vinyl. If you've worked with vinyl, you know how it works. It's the same as this. It's nothing new. This just kind of, if you're not pulling it in the right direction, it just tends to rip super easy because I mean, look how thin that is. It's so thin. And they do make different colors of this. I think that the blue is a little bit more expensive than the gold, but I haven't honestly used the blue. I've just always used the gold because it works really well with my plotter that I have to cut stuff out on my computer. So I have not used it, but I do hear if you're doing curved surfaces that it does do curved surfaces a lot better than the gold. So if you need to try that out with the blue instead of the gold, but the gold works really well overall on everything. So you can tell just right now just how easy that was. Obviously I took some time before I pulled the video up to video record that I've already done some of the work, but I probably got, just to tape this off, I probably got 25 to 30 minutes in it and peeling it off. So literally no time at all. There's a couple areas I need to fix, like I said, but other than that, we are ready to start outlining the background of this, and now we have no issue. We don't have to worry about anything getting on the semi. Now, I will tell you this, I'm not perfect by no means. Most people aren't. So what I will do, when I finally get everything ready to be painted on, I will clean the surface and I will take a little bit of reducer that I use to reduce my base coat, and I will just slowly go around and hit the edges. What I'm doing, when I do that, what I'm essentially doing is I am getting any of the paint off the edges that the tape did not cover. I'm not perfect by no means. I'm pretty damn close, but I'm not. So what that will do is that'll clean up my edges, because when it happens is if you're doing something on the background and you leave, like, let's say I forget to tape this off and I start spraying it, you're gonna see that line because that paint that we already have on this is built up. So you need to get rid of that line, that tape line, that paint line. So doing so by cleaning up with a little bit of reducer, it don't take much. You don't want a lot of, because it will start eating, the vinyl and the tape will start getting wet and it'll eat the paint that you already have on here. Just take a little bit and just dab it around the areas that you think the paint's showing through, that you didn't fully mask off, and it will take care of it for you, no issues. And then you're ready to go. And just saying that by itself is you need to start cleaning your areas. Every layer you do, since I'm doing the background on this, I'll go through and I'll clean, wax, and grease it really well, and then we will start. Because obviously I've had my hands on here, I've been doing other things throughout the day, so I want to get all those waxy minerals and materials off of the surface before I go and paint, and have no issues with when I go to clear coat this thing with it reacting to any grease or anything like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and fix this. We're gonna set it back up, and we're gonna start to get to painting, and we'll go on to the next step. All right, so went around and cleaned everything, tacked everything off. Now we're ready for the next step. I actually got this sitting on my easel. I honestly don't know if it's gonna hold the weight or not. This tailgate is really, really heavy, but I figured for the video purpose, this will be a lot better than being on the other stand. The other stand kind of tilts the tailgate a little bit, so it's kind of awkward for me and for you guys to watch it. So I'm gonna put it on this easel and we'll see how it does. But the next step is, after you got everything cleaned, you can see all the edges are nice and taken care of. It's nothing but the tape and the back mask now. Now we can move on to the other steps. So I want to emphasize this. I'm not just going in here and drawing whatever I want. We have when I say we, the customer and I've already have been over this multiple times, and I've spent over 3 hours already doing pre-drawings for him on my computer. And then we've gone through and picked the ones that we didn't like, got rid of those, and kept the ones that we liked, and just kind of built off of those pictures and placed things where we need to place them. And then, you know, he kind of just, the customers always give me the okay before I just go and draw everything. That way they have an idea of what it might look like towards the end. Now, obviously, if I need to change something when I'm painting to make it look a little bit better, or if I think it's going to look better doing it a different way, I'll go ahead and do that. But at least the customer knows the idea that's what it's gonna look like towards the end. So I am just going off of, I've got my picture pulled up on my phone that I've already done the drawing off of. Pretty much I just took a picture from my computer screen, sent it to my phone, and that's what I'm using as a reference, is my own drawing on the computer. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna tackle the highway that this truck is actually going down. So the customer emphasized that he wanted the road to kind of disappear in the background. So that's what we're gonna do. So the road's gonna kind of disappear at the bottom as well. We're kind of gonna fade this off toward the body line. So I'm gonna go right against this body line. Now what I'm using is a chalk pencil. I can draw on this and I can just erase it without having any issues. I can paint over top of it, clean it off when I need to. So these are really awesome. If your surface is already clear coated, or if you have a surface that you know that's gonna get covered up with paint, these are really awesome, because if you mess up, if I go do this and I don't like it, I just go back in and I can wipe it off, and it's not gonna harm the clear coat or anything that's already on this. So these are really, really awesome. I suggest you get some of this stuff. Some of these, they come in like a pack of 4 or 5, I believe. So I use these all the time just to give me a roadmap, because I'm pretty much freehanding this, even though I am using a little bit of tape and some stencils and some pens and things like that, and these chalk pencils. I am using more than just an airbrush. So I really recommend getting things that you can use along with the airbrush to give you road maps. and ideas of where things need to go, and it'll make your life a lot easier. So like I said, the road's going to disappear kind of after this body line, so we're not going to be putting much paint below that body line right there. So we're just going to go right against this body line, and we're just kind of make it. You guys probably won't see much of the chalk outline because I'm going really, really light, but I'm just going to make the road kind of go this direction. And I'm not really being really too stingy with where I'm putting this because it's just chalk, but it's just giving me idea. So along with the road and the background and everything, there's going to be a horizon line from where the road kind of goes down, and there's going to be a little bit of a hill right in the middle of this picture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw that line just to make sure I know where the road separates from the ground and the background, or the foreground and the background. So it's right above kind of like where the fender and hood meet right here. So I'm going to go right against that, kind of right above it, and I'm just going to make a line. Now I'm just going to fade it out a little bit. So that's my line. I'm going to step back and look at it. It actually needs to be a lot straighter than that, because this is going to tell me where I put that. So there's that. And then we're going to do the same thing on this side. And in this video, we might not do a lot of painting, but there's going to be a lot of laying stuff out, so you guys actually get to see how things are laid out and how they become what they are going to become. So you can see that line hopefully a little bit better than what I already had it. And then the road itself, I'll do a little bit darker. That way you can kind of see what I'm going off of. All right. And then obviously the road is going to be somewhere over here, kind of going that direction as well. And it's not like a really big, wide 2-lane road. It's just a 1-lane road is what we come to. And obviously there's going to be like a line, like a white line like every road has. It's going to be a paved road. It's not going to be like a dirt road or anything like that. But you know how they have those white lines on the asphalt that run down it. So it'll have that. So we're kind of just draw that in there. And a lot of this stuff, like especially these white lines, I'll use tape to make them more perfect. But for right now, just to lay everything out. So you can kind of see we got the horizon line that I'm going to call the horizon line from the foreground in the semi to the background, where it's going to have like mountains, hills, everything else involved into it. And this road needs to go into that background and disappear. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that. So you almost have to imagine this road going off and it disappears right off this horizon line, and then it almost like kind of goes down a hill, and then it continues on in the back. That's kind of how I drew it up. So that's what we're going to kind of go with. So it's going to be it's almost going to be staggered over a little bit. So we almost need to draw and then towards the end, as it's disappearing, it's getting narrower, narrower, narrower. So I'll make that a little bit wide, more wide. I'll take a step back, kind of look at what I've got, and I really like that. So that's what we're gonna go with. And you can make it like, if you've got stuff that like hills are inside of this and it's going around to like a mountain or whatever you want to do, you can do that too to make it look a little bit cooler. Like, I know there's gonna be, it's pretty much gonna be just land, like hilly land, grassy land, that's got some hills in it. And then the background's gonna be like mountains that have like snow caps and things like that. So this road isn't gonna really wind against a hillside or a mountain. It's just gonna kind of go between valleys. So I know there's probably gonna be a mountain like over here somewhere. And then so I can actually go and like kind of draw that in to where instead of it just going straight back and kind of disappearing over here, I can make it kind of wind and kind of just kind of like, I guess, disappear against the hills, the mountainside. So the mountains and things like that, we're gonna draw in the hills first. So the hills are kind of, they're just sporadic. They're nothing really, there was no image or anything. The camera died, so what I was saying is there was really no reference pictures that I was actually using to kind of draw this up on my computer. I was just kind of going with what the customer liked and what I thought was aesthetically pleasing to look at. Because one thing I always consider when I'm doing something for somebody is, and you might want to consider this too if you're a customer, is you almost have to create something that that customer, or yourself, if you're doing something for yourself, you want to create something that you can actually look at over and over and over and over again, day in, day out, for years, because you want, obviously want your customers to keep their stuff as long as they can. So you want to create something that people are willing to look at every single day and not get sick and tired of it. So that's what I usually try to think in the back of my head when I'm doing this stuff, is something that's actually pleasing to actually go ahead and look at, no matter what day it is, what kind of mood you're in. You're going to look at it, and it's going to be something you can just continue on to look at every single day. And that's something that most people don't, when they're doing art, they don't really consider that. They just kind of create whatever they want, which is fine. You know, you got people to do whatever they want, which is good. You want to create something that's original, that nobody else has or doesn't look like anything else, of course. So, but you also have to create something that is something that somebody's willing to just look at day in, day out and not get sick and tired of it. But this is like a memorial piece, so I don't think that's going to happen anyways, because nobody else can actually, you know, if he ever sells this, he's going to have to paint over this because this is his. So, and I don't think he's ever going to sell this truck. So I don't have to really worry about that. But you are going to have to, you know, when you are doing art, I've had my stuff sold multiple times, different people, and those people, you know, every single one of them loved everything. But I always think about that in the back of my head, like, is this something that this customer can actually look at for the rest of their life, essentially? So I'm just mapping in some of the mountains that I've got going on here. And this stuff is going to change a lot. I mean, I'm going to start painting this stuff, and you'll be surprised at how much this will change as far as the way it looks right now. So we got our mountains in there. Like this one right here, like I wanted to make this one actually really tall. So I need to kind of go back in here and make it taller than what I had it. And that's gonna change all this. Stuff like that's gonna change. Like none of this is set in stone. Obviously I'm doing with chalk. I can actually erase it whenever I want to. But that is essentially what we are going with doing this. And then the one thing I want to add before I go any further, I had this road just kind of going this way and just kind of disappearing over this hillside, but I kind of want to wrap it. I want to make it look like it's heading around towards those mountains and disappearing in the background. So something like that. So I'm really happy with the way that looks. And now we can go ahead and set this up and set the airbrushes up. The one thing I'm going to go ahead and start working on is the actual highway. So I'm going to get the airbrushes set up and we're going to start blocking all this stuff in with the road and the highway and get all those colors down and get that stuff laid out. That was my goal, to get all this laid out, the road map, and then get the road somewhat blocked in there. All right, so I have a very, very light gray mix up in my airbrush. Turn the air pressure down a little bit. Got to make sure it's flowing the way I want it. So I'm not gonna tape off this highway or this road at all, because if you ever looked at a highway or a road, unless you're on the interstate, they kind of fade off. Like there's a really soft edge. There's really not a hard line that stops from the edge of the road to the grass. So it's just always inconsistent. So I'm not going to tape it off. We're just going to kind of go with it, and kind of when we do the grass and everything, I'll kind of make that rough edge that these roads have, because we got to think here, this semi is kind of off the grid a little bit in the mountains and the hills. And we got to kind of make the road look like it's in its current state of where it's actually at. So we're going to do that. I've got this little bit of light gray in here. We're going to see how well it holds up against this gray right here that's already on here. But I'm going to start with using these templates, these custom stencils for textures, because a highway, a road, has a lot of texture in it. So I need to start creating that texture first before I just go in here and start blasting it with color. So we're gonna start doing that. And we're gonna see how well this lighter gray, it might be not light enough against this background color that we already have, that the truck is, the color of the truck. If that makes any sense. I can't talk today. It's a little bit lighter, which is fine. And this might, I don't even know if this is registering on the actual video or not. And if you're not seeing this, you might think, why am I doing this? It's a waste of time, blah, blah, blah. All this, you're doing all these little steps, but yet it's not doing anything. It's just, you might just think it's a waste of time. And you might think that, but you know, the way that I kind of airbrush, you know, I don't do the same thing every time. I kind of challenge myself everything that I do and do things differently depending on what I'm airbrushing to kind of keep it interesting for myself. So I always change my ways and my habits a little bit. But the way that I normally airbrush is I will go in and try to put as much detail in it, kind of at the, depending on what it is, like this road for existence. For example, I mean, it's got a lot of texture in it, so I need to build that texture up before I put color, like just put a full block of color on it, because once I put that full block of color on it, it's going to be, I got to work backwards now. So if I just go through and I start building this stuff up with textures every time that I go and put color down, and it'll just start compounding on top of each other in layers, and you'll start seeing all those little bits of textures every layer that I put down. You'll start seeing that stuff come to life. It's almost, it really depends on what you're airbrushing. Like if you're doing a portrait or anything like that, you'll see a lot of those guys, they'll just build up textures and textures. It's almost like a printing machine. They'll just build up those textures within that portrait as they go along, and it's just almost like a printer when they're painting it. So that's kind of like the way that I can explain it to you to make it make a little bit more sense, is that you want to kind of build those up, those textures, and then you can put color, your transparent colors over top of that, and you can start seeing these textures throughout every single shade of color, and that's what makes it a little bit more realistic. You know, most people, they don't want to put the time and effort into making things hyper realistic or anything like that. And I'm not saying I'm the hyper realistic artist or anything, but I do try to make things a little bit more realistic than what 90% of people will try to do. And it's not knocking anybody, to be honest with you. It's just there's a certain look that I like my stuff to look like. And a lot of people, you know, airbrushing is one of those things that when it was first created, it was a method of painting that to where you can get something knocked out really, really quickly. And that's what airbrushing kind of is. It's always has been that way, but for the last few decades, there's been artists that come around that have actually made it to where you can actually make things and show people that you actually can put a lot of detail into something with an airbrush. So I'm liking that. Like I said, I might just fog, you know, since I have that portion down, I can go in here and kind of build those places up a little bit. With more color. Because my paint that I'm using that's in this cup right now, it's actually fairly, it's reduced a lot, so it's almost pretty much like it's not an opaque, it's more of a transparent at this point. So I'm not getting that full color that I would get if I didn't reduce it as much. but I'm using my micron. So I'm having to over reduce what I'm doing to get it to go through and the way I want it to lay down. All right, so now I can move up and I can start kind of, now this part of the highway or the road, whatever you want to call this piece of road, is going to be lighter in color. And then as it's fading away, it's going to get darker. We're not going to do like a straight black road or straight black asphalt or anything like that. We're going to gradually make it fade away and it be a little bit darker as it's going towards the background, because that's what happens, right? Things that veer off into the distance seem darker than what they do up close. And I'm not trying to be like pretty or anything like that. I'm just trying to get a lot of this just knocked in and filled in here. To give me the illusion that it is what we're going towards as far as a road itself. And I like that. Like what I just did right there, I kind of put a little bit more paint than normal, and it kind of gave it a highlight within the texture of the stencils. One thing this image is gonna have is it's going to have a really bright sunset. So one of the things the customers really wanted was a really nice sunset. So I want to make a lot of this stuff that's within this image, especially right here with the road right here and kind of back here. I'm going to make it a little bit lighter than what it would appear, because we're going to be bouncing those sunset colors that I use for the sunset. All those colors are going to be really transparent, and we're going to make those colors bounce off everything within this image. So like the land, the green grass that's in it, the road, the semi itself, we're going to do highlights of the color of the sunset to where it's bouncing off of it. We're just going to make this thing look like it's actually there, with all the detail that we're going to put in this with the colors. And that's what's going to really pull this whole thing together, is that sunset at the very end. We're just going to make it really bright and colorful, and we're just going to make everything in this image a part of that to pull it all together. All right, so I'm liking that. Looks really, really good. All right, so now, and another thing is when you go lighter, like if you do lighter first, I did a lighter gray first, because when you look at a road, the lighter is actually within the road itself. It's not what's on the very top. The darkest areas are actually what's laying on top. So with doing that and doing it this way, I can actually go to the next shade, which is going to be a darker color of gray than what this is, and we can work our way up all the way to like almost straight black for like some of the shadows and stuff. And we can work our way up by just adding little drops of black each time into this. I always try to count my drops. That way I can keep track of how much I put in each time. So if I need to recreate a certain color, I can do so with how many drops I put in it versus what at the end of when everything is pretty much almost straight black or like a really, really dark gray. If you've got mixing cups, you can go ahead and make all these up ahead of time. I just work pretty quick, so I will create things on the fly. And I know a lot of people don't like to do that. They like to lay everything out, lay their colors out, and have mixing cups already pre-made of color to where they just gotta clean their airbrush out and go, which it does make it a lot easier. It makes it really, really easy that way if you've already got pre-mixed colors. So I suggest, I just don't have anything that will actually hold solvent paint. Only thing I have is plastic cups. So if you know anything about solvent paint and plastic cups, it will eat right through. Solvent will eat right through these cups in like seconds. So if you didn't know that, solvent, that's what solvent does. Solvents, they will eat through everything you throw at them. Instead of, you know, so I suggest if you're going to use solvent paint, get some metal mixing cups. I should have some for as long as I've been doing this. I just don't, for whatever reason. I'm just always been that person that'll mix stuff up on the fly, which is all right, but it is really nice to be able to have pre-made colors because you can label them. You can actually mark them like 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on how you're painting. If that makes any sense. I might have not have put enough black in it to actually stand apart from what's on there. Yeah, it's showing up a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and throw a little bit more black into it. More black and more reducer. Get it to where I need it. That way we can start building this up a little bit quicker. So you guys can actually see in this video what it's kind of heading towards. I'm hoping you guys can pick up all this texture detail that I put in this, because it's looking really, really good. So I'm really happy with the way that it's coming out. So that should be dark enough. So when I'm doing this, I didn't explain this when I moved on to the next color. So since it's darker, the color is darker, I'm gonna try to stay in the areas that will have a shadow. So since the background of the sunset's coming towards us, the semi itself is gonna be blocking a lot of that. So a lot of this back here, underneath the tires, back here, the side, it's all gonna have a shadow coming down on the road. So we gotta keep that in mind. So I will continue to stay into the darker shaded areas and then kind of fade them out. And then at the very end, when we're getting to our darkest dark of the road itself, I can go in and actually lay in all the drop shadows of everything. But we're not there yet, so we can continue on with doing this way. Kind of liking how that is coming along. So I'm adding more black to it. I mean, it's all up to you how many layers of paint you want to put on as far as what you're mixing up. I personally like to go a little bit slower than probably most people, and really build up those layers, because it is a little bit easier for me and for anybody else doing this. You can actually pull off something and mess it up if you are able to go back and reverse rather quickly by doing a little bit of layers at a time. It's almost like bulletproof. It's where if you do really mess something up, you can correct it pretty easily without having to go back 7 steps, because you're slowly adding those colors in a little bit at a time. I was going to do this video as a time lapse, but I think a lot of you guys will, I know the owner of this watches now because I gave him my YouTube channel handle, so I know he'll be watching in. So doing a time lapse, you kind of miss a lot of the actual process. But then again, I can't really you won't be able to see a lot when I don't do a time lapse, because I'm actually working at the pace you guys are watching it. When I do a time lapse, I can fit in an hour's worth in like 1 minute or 2 minutes worth of video time. So you guys are actually seeing more per video than what I'm actually, what I'm actually doing. So now I'm slowly building up all this stuff. It does take a lot of time if you want to put in the effort of doing all this. And I'll even go around like I'm doing right now and do like a drop shadow on everything real quick to kind of establish certain things. So build this up back here. And since we're not going like straight black with this, and we're building this up slowly, I can tighten up anything I need to tighten up along the way. So if I get, like, if you guys are looking at this and you're like thinking all this overspray and everything's going everywhere, right? Well, that's fine with me right now because I am needing that overspray, because all this darker gray is going to eventually become a green. So I need a little bit of this overspray to kind of patch in and block off this really dark gray that this vehicle is. So this is starting to look like something here, which is really neat. I'll go in and I'll add a little of this darker gray and build it up a little bit, because like I said, this will actually fade it off into the distance and it'll be like a really dark gray, almost a black. I'm not going to call it a black, but it's going to be a really dark gray. Because I mean, honestly, I don't think, if you look at asphalt, we'll say this is going to be asphalt, right? So if you ever look at asphalt, it's not really, I mean, it's close to black, but it's like a super dark gray. And then when I go in and add the green, the grass and everything, I'll have to be a little bit more careful to not get this green on this road, because it's going to be a lot of green. I mean, there's a lot, even inside of here, inside of here, over here, up here. It's going to be a lot of green. So I'm not going to be able to go in and just, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to go in and blast it anyways. But if you really needed to, you would have to be extremely careful and almost have to mask this road off to do so. But since this green is going to be grass, we're going to make it look like grass. So if you've been painting, like actually airbrushing, or if you hand paint or anything like that, that requires a skill of like using your hand instead of a machine to do it, you understand that when you paint something that's as fine as grass is, and there's so much of it, it's the same thing with like fur on animals, right? Grass, fur, hair, anything with a lot of strands in it, it takes forever and you really got to go super slow. So with as much green that we got to put in here, I will not be blasting it anyways because it's going to be grass. So we will be taking our time and doing every little strand piece of grass to pull off this look. So I've darkened this up a little bit more. And a lot of people might think, man, that's awesome. This is the way it's coming out, is like, it's almost done, right? Well, that's up to you. That's up to you. If you got the customer, you know, to agree with it, that's all up to you, to be honest. So you can, like I said, you can spend as much time as you possibly want and your heart desires, depending on how you are wanting to pull off your image, what you want it to look like is what I mean. Because if you're going for like something that's really hyper realistic, that shows a lot of detail, you would be working a lot slower than what I am. I can tell you that right now. You'll be, those guys that do like the hyper realistic pieces of artwork, they work extremely, I mean extremely slow as far as building up their pieces. Like it's super slow. They'll go through and they'll do it by hand even. They'll go through by hand and just make every single little dimple, every single little crack. And that's what really pulls off. If you ever seen those guys when they get done with their art, I'll tell you this, that's what really pulls that stuff off, is going through and adding every little bit of texture detail, all the little shades of colors. That is what really pulls that stuff off. So we're not going to go that as far as realism goes. We're not going to pull, we're not going to do all that. But we're going to do a really nice, I told the customer this, I told him that the way I want this thing to look is almost as if somebody hand painted it. So we want to make it look like more of like that painterly so that's what I'm kind of going for, is that more of that painterly look. And I'm just kind of going in here and establishing the edge of the road here. Even though we know where the edge of the road is, but we're going to make it to where you can actually tell. See, just doing that right there, I mean, it just brings everything together. And we go back through here and do this drop shadow again to make certain areas darker. I'll step back and look at it for a minute. Really liking the way it looks. We'll make the, so when a road, if you ever look at a highway that kind of, it's got a lot of hills in it, the very top peak before it goes over is dark. So we're gonna make a little bit of a line here to establish like this road. Anything really, it's not just a road, but when you bend something, like when you take something, you bend it, you can even do it on a piece of paper. Like when you start folding, not really fold it, but just bend it to where it's got a curve in it, you'll see the very top of that paper almost create like a shadow of it rolling over. So that's what we're doing here. It's the same concept. And then we fade it out a little bit. And now we can go on to a darker black. Or a darker gray. I shouldn't say black because it's not going to be black, but it's going to be a darker gray. And one thing I'm going to do when I get to a certain point that I feel like it's at, we're going to create like ridges in the road. I think that's what we, little humps, I guess. If you've ever seen a road that's been traveled on a lot by semis, you'll notice that there are like humps, like grooves inside the road itself, to where it's humped over of heavy weight going down it. And that's what we're going to kind of create. We're going to create those humps. So the areas where the tires of these heavy trucks continue to drive on will be super light, like it won't be as dark. So in between those, we need to create like a hump, a little bit darker hump. So depending on what we got here, we might be able to do it. So I'm gonna go through again, make these a little bit darker in certain areas to make it look like it's got a shadow. I like that. All right. So now I can go back in. We can create some of these darker areas in this road. Heck, I might even like it to where it's making it look like not an actual highway and just making it look like it's been traveled on, like it's a paved road that's so old that it's just got a bunch of cracks and stuff in it. We'll just see how it turns out. And that's some of the stuff that I decide that, on the fly, that I might just pull off. You can make this look anything you want. Like you can make it look like gravel, which I mean, if you really think about it, it almost does look gravelly because of the way that the colors are right now. Another thing you got to keep in mind that this whole image is kind of got a look that everything's fading into the distance. So things that are going to be up closer to you are going to have the most detail in it. So I need to start thinking about that because I don't want to add a bunch of detail to stuff that's in the background. We're going to give it kind of like that background and foreground look, that everything in the foreground is actually really detailed and everything in the background is kind of like not as detailed, so you gotta kind of fade everything out. And I've been simply using the same stencil, same pattern this whole time. I can go through here and add, I don't really like anything else in here, so I might not. I'm gonna try this though. I'm gonna try this little speckled stuff over here and see what it looks like. It's not too bad. Actually kind of like that. So, if you guys can see this, what I just did, see if I can get you guys all this stuff right here. I'm just using the very top of this. It almost gives it like the road is like cracking almost, which is really, really cool. So we might just play off of that. I'm really liking how that's turning out. So I don't want to go too much darker and combine everything, keep going like that, but it'll just turn into a solid color if you keep adding and adding and adding, so you kind of got to understand when to stop. So we'll add a bunch of detail down here. And as it's fading away, like I said, we'll just keep adding less and less detail. So I'm going to go through a few more rounds of this, of just adding dark or adding black into my mixture, and then we'll come back. But I want to first step you guys away, kind of see what it's going to be like, give you that idea. And I'm going to do this, and we'll come back and I'll show you guys when I get closer to the end what it looks like. Alright, so we're back. Now I am to the end of, I think, of how dark I want this to be, because I don't want it so dark that we can't get any of the colors into it to actually reflect off of it. I think it's pretty good for right now. If I need to come back and kind of tweak it, I can. No big deal. But now I'm going to start adding. It doesn't take much. You don't want, if you're at the darkest dark of what you're doing, and doing shadowing and stuff like that, it does not take much. You don't want to black everything out. Even though it's not black, you do not want it to be nothing but black. So just want a little bit. Mainly the tires. That's where I'm kind of going with, because the tires that are on a surface that are like really heavy will actually create a really sharp shadow from it smooshing against the road. So that's what we're going for. And then I'll add a little bit of texturing into what I want to with this darker shade of gray. Like I said, this is where we're gonna leave the detail to be in the back or in the foreground. The background, we're gonna kind of fade away. Because this is gonna be really dark compared to everything we just did. So we're gonna stop it midway right there. We're gonna kind of add some texturing towards the middle here. Nothing too crazy. I might add a little bit to this edge. I mean, not much, just a little bit. Just to give it a little bit of an edge from where the road stops, and like that grass, that grassy edge, that distance between the grass and the road are gonna meet. Same thing over here. There's gonna be some of this, a lot of this are actually gonna probably get covered up because we're gonna keep the grass relatively closer to the road. We're not gonna give it that space that you see on a lot of roads, that it's just a bunch of gravel and stuff between the road itself and the grass. We're actually gonna make the grass a little bit closer, like it's almost growing out of these cracks in some spots. And then I'll come in here. This gets no detail back here at all. I mean, it's just one solid color almost. We might put a little bit of detail, like I mean, I'm talking a little bit right here. Boom. I think I went too dark right there, but we can fix that later. All right. So I'm pretty happy with that, the way it looks. Kind of fade this off to the sides a little bit. So I'm calling that for right now. This video has gone very, very long, longer than what I wanted it to be. But this way, you guys got to see in live action of the mapped out road being blocked in. And all the little details. I mean, I don't know if you guys can see this in person or on the video, but in person, this just stands out. And I can vision all those colors reflecting off of these these highlight spots where they're a little bit lighter in some areas, and then getting the rest of this filled in. And then we're going to keep doing videos of blocking in each section. And then when the entire section pretty much gets blocked in, is what I call it, which is like almost slightly there, but it needs a little bit of tuning still. We can keep going back and forth and making these colors play with each other to make it all come to life. So we're going to almost do this in like kind of little islands. So we did the truck first. That was our first island that we worked on. The second island was the road. Third island's probably going to be the grass. And then the fourth island's going to be the mountains. And the fifth will be the sunset. And when we get to the sunset part, that is when all those colors, everything will be pretty much blocked in, done. I'll be going back and forth between from the road scene to the mountain scene, the part of the mountains to the snow caps to the sunset. We keep going back and forth, and when we get to that sunset part, all those colors that will come through the sunset will just kind of blend in to the rest of the image, if that makes sense, the way I'm explaining that. I'm kind of just rambling on at this point, but it's pretty late. I'm getting pretty tired, so I'm going to call it right here. So stay tuned for the next video. We're going to start knocking out the grass and getting everything kind of playing in together with itself. And then we'll go on and keep making videos after that. And then sooner or later, it'll all be in there. And we'll get to going on the final details, which will be at the very end, and getting things placed where they need to be placed. There are going to be images within this overall scenery picture. So it's not going to just be the semi and the background of the mountains and the grass and the hills. There's actually going to be images placed inside of this overall picture, this mural, that's going to really tie in this memorial piece. And then we'll do some lettering as well. So there's a bunch to go still. So there's a lot more to do, but I'm calling it on this video, and I'll see you guys on the next one.